I would just pick up, and whilst of course more money to be spent on defence is given our strategic circumstances, is challenging given the social licence issues, but imperative, and we're absolutely supportive of that. But we make the point that as a capability, you will not find a more cost-effective one than the reserve. And I would just, and I'm not going to quote the entire article, but I will just quote one paragraph from the ASPI article that we had published in the Strategist. The Defence Reserves Association contends that if even an additional 1% of the annual defence budget were directed to the ADF reserves, the effect would be transformational, potentially creating a much larger, more capable reserve force with greater readiness. For example, doubling the strength of the reserve component of Army would enable it to both meet homeland defence tasks, which is the role of the 2nd Australian Division, and support the permanent forces if they were committed to combat operations. And this concurrency would be vital in any national defence emergency. No one pretends that we would deploy operations offshore and have an entirely secure home base. That simply won't happen. The concurrent ability to both protect the homeland and deploy forces offshore and sustain those forces whilst deployed is axiomatic. You must be able to do all those things at the same time. So that's just one aspect of what we contend in terms of defence expenditure and how that money is wisely used going forward. So I thought it appropriate, given that Mr Tata is here, to allow him to speak first. But we do have, as I mentioned, a presentation from the Assistant Minister for Defence. And there not being any other questions of me or Mr Taylor that I can see, I'll ask Josh if you can now play the short presentation from Peter Khalil, the Assistant Minister for Defence. Thanks.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which you're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also pay respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women who have contributed to the defence of Australia in times of peace and war. And acknowledge and thank our host, Brigadier Mike Annett, National President of the Defence Reserves Association. Also acknowledge my parliamentary colleague, the Honourable Angus Taylor, the Shadow Minister for Defence, the Chief of the Defence Force, senior defence leaders, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to join you today, albeit virtually, for the Defence Reserves Association National Conference. Today is an excellent opportunity to publicly recognise the valuable contribution that reservists make to our nation. Consisting of about 1/3 of the ADF, reserves play a critical role in meeting the ADF's workforce targets and addressing the strategic challenges that we face. Reservists come from every corner of our country, from a range of professional and trade backgrounds, representing every stage of working life. You undertake specialist roles and provide surge capacity across all services and warfighting domains, including cyber and space. You make a commitment to your nation. Outside of your work and family life, you spend more time serving your nation, and that is to be commended. Quite a bit has happened since the last Defence Reserves Association conference, but perhaps of most significance to this forum, the government released the strategic review of the ADF reserves. Led by Air Vice Marshal Stephen Meredith and Major General Doug Laidlaw, the review team has undertaken a process of historical review, contemporary scoping, analysis, design and refinement. The strategic review of the ADF reserves, or the Reserve Review, was published in December and identifies 17 recommendations to support the ADF's future workforce requirements, focused on optimising the structure, shape and role of our reserves. A significant outcome of the Reserve Review is to take a deliberate approach to planning how the ADF can most effectively support the 1/3 of its workforce that is represented by actively serving reservists. By improving the management of reserve capacity, improving conditions of service, broadening and deepening industry and employer partnerships, and accelerating reserve entry pathways, the goal is to harness the critical enabling role of reservists to support the ADF's transition to an integrated, focused force. Defence will continue to work with industry partners and other government departments on the implementation of each recommendation and will continue throughout 2025 and 2026. Moving forward, a key outcome of the review will be the establishment of an additional 1,000 reserve positions by 2030, which will be focused on operational reserve roles for Navy, Air Force, Cyber and Space. Since the moment this government was sworn in, we have been focused on ensuring the ADF is fully fit for purpose to respond to the strategic challenges we face. That was the genesis of the Defence Strategic Review. And that is a conviction that underlies the National Defence Strategy and the rebuild of the Integrated Investment Program. This has involved foundational reform, a generational and reinvestment in defence and a suite of measures aimed squarely at growing the workforce, Defence's most important asset. The Federal Labor Government has produced the largest surge in ADF recruitment in 15 years, has reduced separation rates and kept the force strong at over 61,000 full-time personnel. On top of this, more than 75,000 applications to join the ADF were received in 24-25, the highest number in 5 years and a 28% year-on-year increase compared to the same time last year. But with that in mind, we understand there is more work to be done. I'm sure it's not lost on anyone here today or there today, but it is the government's view that Australia's reserve forces are vital to the achievement of an integrated, focused force. From the implementation of AUKUS to the creation of the largest and most lethal surface combatant fleet for Navy, to revitalising our international defence engagement and the fascinating and uncharted, in a sense, world of space and cyber. The opportunities offered by reserve service have never been more exciting or more important. It is a job unlike any other. I thank the Defence Reserves Association for the work you and your members do to deliver Defence's mission, and I wish you well for this conference.
I'm not taking any questions. I will say, however, that I do have an invitation from Mr. Khalil's staff to post this conference to go down and sit down with him and walk through those issues that were raised today, and I'll absolutely do that. And I hope in doing that I might even be able to persuade him to have a three-way conversation with the Defence Minister, Mr. Miles, as well at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. But